Hey, everybody. Welcome. What's going on with you? You're listening and watching the Daily AI Show live, and today is December 23rd. And what we are talking about today is actually what happened on Friday. You guys are laughing. Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Yay, thank you. So, what we're talking about is actually what happened on Friday because OpenAI dropped the new model O3. And there is a big debate about whether this is AGI, why it is, why it isn't. And I should say, actually, they didn't drop it. They did a very open AI thing in that they announced that they have it. They announced an opportunity for people who are not part of their regular security team to apply to be a part of their security team. And before we get further into that, I will just say that if you're just tuning in with us and you're like, O3, what happened to O2? O2 is the name of a telecommunications company in Europe.
Yep.
And OpenAI didn't want to add another lawsuit to the Rolodex of people who are saying that they've done something different. So O3 was announced. It is the next model. O2 doesn't exist. And yeah, so the other funny thing is that I'm not sure I can hear my partners, but let me say that I am on with Brian and Andy. And yeah.
Can you hear us
Andy,
at
do
all,
you want to
Beth?
give us a little overview of like what things are, what is happening, where things stand, and I will see if I can hear you.
Okay, I expect you can't hear us, and so let me just open the discussion about general intelligence with these observations. Long ago, there was a very smart person at the dawn of artificial intelligence, a guy named Alan Turing, who established a simple test of whether computing would have arrived at a point where, it was practically capable of imitating a human. And imitation is an important term here because all the test required was that a computer be able to carry on a novel conversation with an observer that was indistinguishable from another human also being observed. Another human, I said, because
Mm.
I'm anthropomorphizing the computer here.
Yeah.
That was simple. So, but that's not really sufficient anymore to evaluate these models because I think all of us would agree that we've long blown past, even before O3, we've blown past the ability of a computer to simulate a human. And I offer up the example of Notebook LM, where the system can now generate a podcast, a discussion between two apparent humans about a complex subject on demand. And you, as a user, can now enter into that conversation with them, interrupting them, asking them other questions. And you would be hard pressed to determine whether that voicing commentator who's a part of the podcast is a real human or is an AI. And you can test this yourself. So I think we've passed the Turing test, no doubt. And then the question is this more subtle and nuanced question of whether true artificial intelligence is general enough that we can call it AGI. So I'm going to say before I turn it over to Brian for his view, I'm going to say that I'm convinced, personally convinced, that O3, the new model, could easily blow past genius level performance on the Stanford Binet IQ test. Why
Mm.
is this true? It's because only very recently, and literally within the last 6 months, or maybe it goes a little bit past 6 months to when the multimodal models of Google, the whole range of Gemini, originally multimodal trained models, have the ability to reason around seeing and listening, okay, in their native training. So now you have an O3 model that has those same multimodal capabilities and can look at images and, you know, think through what it's seeing on those images. And O3 did this in the ARC AGI prize and got to the 88% level of performance on 88%. Now, it did so with a huge expense, right? It
Yep.
used a tremendous amount of compute, but it did it. So I say AGI.
Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick test here because sorry, Andy and I both know we can hear each other. Carl, can you hear both Andy and I right now? And go
Yes,
ahead and say, and we can hear you. Andy, you can hear
perfect.
Carl. Okay, so it was something going on, unfortunately, with Beth's. She was the admin on this, and unfortunately, on her side, we were
Can
having
you hear
some
me now?
technical.
Perfect.
Yes, can you hear?
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to Carl. Beth popped out, but that's because she's trying to fix the audio issues that we're having. So apologize for the technical side of it. I am coming to you live from the University of Georgia. I'm partial to this, but it's the best university in the world. If you just look out the window back there, you would see the stadium, and I will give you a brief taste of out the windows here. So we were just trying to make sure we had everything right. So let me answer your question, or not answer your question, but let me put a comment on this, Andy. Okay, O3. I read up on it. I read about the ARC because I really didn't understand that when they were talking about. Truthfully, I didn't know what that test was or whatever. So I read up about it, did as much research as I could while I'm traveling here and stuff. And my take on it is no, it's not AGI. In fact, I don't actually think it's very close to AGI. I think O3 is a good on the path to. I think it's a necessary step. It shows where we can go with reasoning and where we can go with, more advanced thinking, stuff like that. But I just think it's on the path to some AGI. But I think it's very much like when we first saw 3.5 or 4 and we said, wow, this really impresses us as a whole. Wow, look what it can do with reasoning. Look how much smarter it is for math. We have this benchmark in this ARC testing that is important. But to your point, Andy, that when I read through that to understand it is like essentially in order to get this private top tier, this 85% that's not unofficial but official, would require it to cost something like 10 cents per challenge, right? So it's a huge task in order to do that. It has to be very, very low compute cost. And that's not what they did. So that's why it's an unofficial score. They spent thousands per puzzle, if you will. And there was over 100 puzzles that it could not solve. So I just think this is a great step. I think it's very interesting. It's about what I would expect. It's really probably the O2 model, but they couldn't use or didn't want to use that name, right? And so this is the next logical step towards a path towards agents and AGI. But no, from what I read and understand, I don't think it's capable of AGI. I just think it's just a natural step there. So number one, let me ask really quick.
On that, I want to push back on the cost level. Okay,
right.
when Big Blue back in whenever decades ago, beat the grand chess master of the universe, Kasparov or whatever his name was, we didn't complain that was a multi-million-dollar effort. We just said, oh, wow, a computer is now better at chess than humans can be.
Right.
Okay, so using the cost argument, no, I'm not going to call it general intelligence until it costs only 10 cents per solution.
Well, no. That's that test. That was their test, right? That's just me trying to basically understand this test that has like a $600,000 prize to it, and you have to have parameters, right? There's got to be a test, and so
for the
other
prize, but for
AGI,
sure. For me,
correct.
For me to be able to say, this is the difference between you and me. For me to be able to say that, hey, we've achieved artificial general intelligence, I just need it to be convincingly capable of, sitting across the room through Zoom. And if I'm interviewing that AGI and another human who's a master, a PhD master in the thing, I might have some, preferences for the human version of it. But I don't think you could reasonably expect that the PhD level human intelligence would match up to the capabilities of the AGI. And I'd have to hire the AGI.
I certainly want to get other perspectives to get Carl. By the way, Beth, can you hear us at all now? or anything? No,
No.
no to Beth. Okay. No reaction from Beth. But she's running things from her side, which is great. So I thought I'd take a shot at that. I want to get Carl your reaction to it. Oh, I see what you're saying though, Andy. What I would say is yes, in specific fields, like we've always talked about on the show, will we see major leaps in narrow fields? Absolutely, wherever that may land, because these models are really almost purpose built for that, or they just happen to be very good at the mathematical and sequencing and whatever. And so, sure, like in those pockets, I would say, oh, that's kind of an AGI because for this particular use case. But and I wish I had it in front of me, but I'm literally doing this from my phone and I don't have my resources on my other screen like I normally would. But I read an article, I want to say it was like a TechCrunch or something this morning, and there was a woman in the article, and I'm paraphrasing. I would love to just read this to you, but I'll try to get it in for the newsletter this week. But basically, she said, my definition of an AGI would be when it becomes nearly impossible to devise these types of art tests that an AI can't do for pennies or whatever. Like that was based. I'm so paraphrasing that. She said it so much better than that, but that was the gist of it.
Yeah.
Was
It's
that
it's just stemming from this issue of, hey, there are many simple problems for humans that O3 still can't answer.
correct? Yeah,
Okay, but
correct.
that's like saying, look, I don't consider it AGI until it can be a physicist, a doctor, a mechanic, and all these things. But guess what? It can. O3 has all that knowledge, and it has reasoning capabilities. So again, I'm in positive Christmas spirit, I'm saying I'm the good witch of the West or something.
Well, let's bring in Carl on this one, and then Beth is able to hear us, but on the delay because she's watching the YouTube feed, which is about a 10 to 15-second delay. So, by the way, anybody in the comments, when we read your comments, you are typically, this is typical. This is not our tech gremlins. This is anywhere. We're typically 15 seconds ahead of you or something like that. We're a tape delay in case Andy just starts cursing and we have to cut it out or something. You never know when he's going to go off the edge, and we have to mute him quickly. No, okay. Let me bring in Carl really quick, and then I think Beth will be able to answer after Carl if you want, Beth, when you see this.
Okay.
What's your take on this?
I looked at it as more of, I wanted to find what was the definitions of AGI. So OpenAI, they have their own definition. So highly autonomous systems that have the ability to outperform humans at most economically valuable work. I think then Sam Altman said that the equivalent of a median human that you could hire as a coworker, and that they could do anything that you'd be happy with a remote coworker doing. Interesting definition. So those are those two definitions. If you take them at their own definitions, then this is not there yet. This is on the path to there. I also think that like AGI can't be like, it's not like the singularity, and it's not just it's now AGI. It's like, but there's different levels to it too, depending on the task. So we saw what coding is, we saw what math is. It's beating a lot of humans in these specific tasks. But what I guess like from even OpenAI's definition, I think there's a lot of agency into it, right? There's a lot of highly autonomous systems, equivalent of a median human that you could hire as a coworker. So part of the AGI perspective is it has to be able to do things. And perhaps O3 has, I think right now we're all stuck in the whole trigger like workflows, right? The glorified workflows that people are calling agents. We're still stuck there. But if these things can actually reason, I thought the definition of an AI agent that Dharmesh Shah initially had, where he talked about if you had it, okay, if I gave instructions, I want you to create for me an online newsletter. That's the instruction, or that's the goal. Then it has to find a hosting provider, has to know the brand, has to develop the brand, has to know the schedule, has to lay it out, has to execute all the steps from when you create a newsletter to actually publishing it on a regular basis. If it can do all that, then I think that meets the highly autonomous system that have the ability to outperform humans at economic viable work. And we also have to think, can you do multiple of these agents? Because I'm not sure if you just sit there and watch it, you have to watch it do its thing. That doesn't make any sense. So, but I think though this is awesome that we're hitting all these benchmarks, but I still think I feel we're still in level 2 going into level 3. I don't know if it can actually innovate or aid in innovations by itself. And I don't think it definitely cannot perform the work of an entire organization. But the thing is the cost too, right? So if each task is $1,000, I don't know if what would that look like for a regular person to be using, or regular
Yeah,
business?
it's going to get cheaper.
Oh,
It's gonna
no,
get
no,
cheaper.
we
And let me say this: it required $1,000 per task to get to 88%, which is like A. You give them an A, but it got 76% on low compute. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just a B minus. Okay. But those are those are beyond human level performance on those tests, with the exception of some very exceptional individuals. Right?
Yeah.
But if
Well,
it's going to
like,
be general intelligence, or average general intelligence, let's call it AGI, then we're comparing it unfairly to the very best humans, not to the general population.
I think though I'm going off of what OpenAI has defined itself as AGI. So I was like,
but I don't buy their definition. I'm here to say,
okay,
no,
okay,
we've gotten there, and they're just moving the goalposts continually because there's a big race here to super intelligence. But in terms of artificial general intelligence, I think we're there.
Well,
okay.
so I want to bring in, hold on, I want to talk about, I can't pull it up on screen, but I want to bring in Cisco's comment, which was, he just said, I don't know, Carl, I think we have the tendency to move the goalposts. And then he said, actually, those are good points. Level 2 heading into level 3. I'm with you now. So then in the middle of that comment, Carl swayed Cisco towards what he said.
I don't.
But
So my last
yeah.
point, I just want to last point that is that I honestly don't think it matters who's the definition of AGI or not. I think it's like, if you see all these benchmarks, right? Math, coding, you have to kind of look at it from the general person too. It's like, okay, you're right, Andy. No one's going to be using. Most normal people are not going to be trying to high level this. How many tasks do we on a weekly basis require a PhD level thing about math or math, science, or coding? Very rarely. In fact, even people who are math and science probably don't need that on a regular basis. So I think more so, if I look at it from Andy's point of view, yes, because generally sense, artificial general intelligence is, I guess, defined as at the level of a human being, or most humans. This thing can beat.
Or let's even
human.
say 85. You gotta be above the 85% level.
So it has
humans, right?
technically beaten most humans on those tasks. It's number 175 on that coding benchmark. So I think too, we also have to look at, we can't look at it as a static. You got to look at it. If the scaling laws were just like 01 to 03 and 03 to whatever else they're going, if it's 3 months, I was like, okay, well, by 2026, we got to be somewhere even closer. To be crazy. What are we doing?
That's what I want to bring up. Okay, so I have a couple points here. One, I see your point, Andy, to say that if it costs $1 trillion, but $1 trillion gets you AGI, that doesn't diminish the fact that it's AGI. It just happens to cost $1 trillion right now, if that's what it was, right? So I'm just using it as a huge example of that. We wouldn't diminish it and say, well, it's lesser AGI because it costs $1 trillion. We may say there's no real use case for this today, but we wouldn't deny the ability. So I do see your point there. I was just listening to an interview of Dr. Fei Li on Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard, and it was a great interview. She had been recommended to him or something like that by Ashton Kutcher and this other mutual friends or whatever. And obviously we've talked about her before and what she's doing, I think it's Stanford, and leading as far as visual intelligence, and how images and having AI that can see the world around like we do is so important. And so, she made points on there saying that you don't have to feed a child 1,000 images of a tiger. It will only take a few images before the child goes, yeah, I mean, that looks like that's a tiger based on what I've seen prior to. And it's that ability to maybe have something that's net new that even a child could say, oh, I see the pattern there, because humans are good at that. And obviously, when we saw the examples of the I want to say Arc browser because that's the name of a browser, but the Arc that they were talking about on Friday, and Sam Altman was like, "Yeah, okay, it would be two blue squares or whatever whatever the puzzle was." And of course, they're trying to make sure that this cannot be in the pre-trained data, like, and you can't brute force your way through it. Like, you can't throw. That was the point of the that I understood with the compute was, like, well, you could brute force anything with enough compute and get it to guess the right answers, and of course, they don't want that either. So I think, to me, when I look at this, I'm just, it's not that it's any less impressive, and it's not that I feel like I'm moving the goalposts. It's just that I know last year I felt very, very much like, oh, this is new and something I haven't seen before, and its ability to reason now starts to feel otherworldly or human-like or even above and beyond human. But I think we're going to go through this every year, honestly, and we're going to have these feelings of, is this AGI? And then we're going to step back and say, oh, it's on the path towards it, and it's certainly impressive. But I also expect Google to have something similar to O3 in 2025 because they're on that path too right now, and we may see it from some of the other models as well. So I don't know. That's just where my brain is on it. Not any less impressive, not trying to move the goalposts, but also probably not very close to AGI as I see it right now.
Okay, I want to take a different tack on this, which is we've been testing human intelligence forever, or at least in my lifetime. I took an IQ test in high school. I'm sure. You don't typically, after taking the test, get to see what your score is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're an average human, you get a score of 100. And it's posited that even though I guess Albert Einstein did not take a Stanford Binet IQ test, that his IQ was somewhere in excess of 160. Okay, well, computers now running large language models and deep neural networks have scored on the language component of the IQ test a 154. Okay, so the test that we apply to humans, the AGI can already be certified as an expert on that component of it. Now, that test was done a few years ago, or earlier in the last couple of years, and that was just on text manipulation and reasoning in large language models. So it could do that, but it also had to have multimodal capabilities to do the test. So I don't actually have the reference to that, but that's the one thing I could find online through Perplexity specifically, that it evaluated LLMs, multimodal LLMs, on the question of how does it perform on the Stanford Binet intelligence scale, and it was a genius there. So why do we have so nitpicky requirements for AGI when these tools can do things that I could never approximate? And my areas of domain expertise, are just a small fraction of what these frontier models can understand, comprehend, and replicate.
Because it's not general. Because it's not general. I think
generalization is a different concept, I understand, but
yeah,
they do have this generalization capability. I'm convinced of it.
Okay, so my pushback on that would be, I don't know, like, I haven't read books about Einstein other than my general knowledge of Einstein, and watching different movies and stuff. But it wouldn't be uncommon for somebody that had that high level of IQ to also forget to tie their shoes, or put on two different color socks or something like that. And probably was not important to Einstein. And I think he was the one that said, like, why do I have to remember that if I can look it up really quickly? Like, he had certain things, whatever. Okay, so he's a genius, no doubt about that. We've had many, many other geniuses that, as a society, we've deemed with that and said, hey, this is the test. And, my thing is this: if it's artificial general intelligence, it's got to be able to have at least a memory to say that not only am I good in my area of expertise, but I'm also capable of distinguishing the right flowers to buy my wife based on past experiences. And so there's this long memory context chain that has to be part of it. And I don't know if that needs to be indefinite. I don't really know if that's fair. But when I think of general intelligence, I think of it being very broad and still being able to come up with the right pattern solutions in life. That's to say it mimics humans. And so I might be brilliant. I might have an Einstein level IQ, but I also might fumble very, very simple pattern recognition things in my own house that would extremely upset my wife, where she'd say, "How could you not know that?" And I'd say, it doesn't match up for me, but I'm a genius." And she'd say, "I don't care if you're a genius, you still haven't been able to put the food back in the fridge the way it goes, you
Yeah,
know?
well, but we
So,
still ascribe general intelligence to you, even though you have these flat sides, as the models do as well. Let me just run through quickly what the Stanford Binet intelligence thing tests, right?
okay.
Because
But can
none
you,
of
yeah,
us
can you
remember.
back up with this? Because I
Yeah,
because you keep saying Stanford Binet, like, is that an IQ test, or can you,
yes,
what is
that's an
this?
IQ
Okay,
test.
okay,
It's the
okay,
it's the general IQ test that's used in academia, or has
okay.
been used in academia. Okay. So what it tests is fluid reasoning. That's, can you think abstractly without relying on prior knowledge? And I believe that AIs can do this. The next thing, why? Because it's all about identifying patterns, completing sequences, and solving verbal analogies. Okay. I believe AI can do that. All right. The next thing is general knowledge, vocabulary, factual knowledge, comprehension. The third piece is quantitative reasoning, numerical and mathematical abilities like solving equations. No doubt it's math Olympiad capable. Visual spatial processing. This is why I mentioned this is very recent that we've achieved AGI, because it's the multimodal models at the frontier that are doing this. This is about assembling puzzles or interpreting geometric shapes. And that's what the ARC prize examples were that you saw on the OpenAI final day of shipments. And then the last one, reason I wanted to bring this in is working memory. And this is your
Hmm.
point, Brian. In
Hmm.
order to be artificial general intelligence, it has to have some capacity to collect things, remember them, and apply them in its reasoning steps. I don't think there's any doubt in my, well, there's certainly no doubt in my mind. I don't think there's any doubt that there is, maybe not big, huge, long-term memory banks available to those frontier models in its own training, but it has access to lots of other memory banks if it's given access to the world.
Mm.
And so it can imitate the ability to maintain memory over a long time if it has access to data about you. And so it will be smarter than you and also have longer and more sophisticated memory than you. So
Mm.
that's why I'm saying, why are we quibbling? This is
It's a small
really
thing.
amazing technology that has achieved AGI.
I like, why are we quibbling? You're like, this is a small thing.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Gwyn is really on the side of this is not AGI. Why?
Mm.
And I think I just saw it scrolling by in the
Mm.
chat, and she's saying, for example, what about common sense? What about opinions? Well, I think that if you have a conversation with one of the frontier models right now through advanced voice mode, whether at Gemini or with OpenAI, you're going to ask it for its opinion, and it's going to give you an opinion, right? You ask a human its opinion, and you're going to be unimpressed in many cases with what the foundations of its opinions are.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
I'm,
I don't find that to
I'm
be a
unimpressed with many
quality
humans.
test. And then the other one is common sense. There's a lot of humans that don't have much common sense,
Yeah.
and so that's why I guess I'm lowering the bar for
Yeah.
everybody here. I think that the common intelligence that we observe in humans, I'm not going to call
I'm
out
gonna
anybody.
raise the bar because I really like what Jude was saying. It's like, if it can't take out my recycling, then we don't care what the hell this AGI doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
I
I need it to
figured you're
go.
gonna say that.
I need
Yeah.
I need it to. I think though, so let's look at it this way. If we all agreed it's AGI, then what does that do for us? Like I'm trying to figure out, does it matter if it's AGI or not? Like what I think is like going forward, what are we trying to think of? Like how
Yeah.
would we apply this? Okay, let's say today we all agreed, everyone agreed it's AGI. I think what Sam was saying is like, and then life will go on because it's like, oh,
Right.
okay, sounds good. There was I think it was the big technology podcast is like, well, I'm still gonna complain about my boss. I'm still gonna have to go into commute. I'm still gonna have to do all these things. And it's interesting that like if you once you get AGI or we don't get AGI, it doesn't matter. The adoption into everyday life is still really, really slow. Like it's still, businesses haven't circled around building their business around it. They actually, most of them won't. They'll just, oh, let's do whatever until new businesses come out and be like, well, I'm going to completely surround my business and, take over the industry or create new industries, which then that's to me, the economic path.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I like you're right. It'll be kind of a, life will go on type of thing. What I imagine, not necessarily in 2025, but happening over time with these leaps and bounds is, hopefully what I hope is like I'll use my old job, not scale that I work for now, but a different company that was a consulting company. And I did go into an office at least 3 days a week. I went into an office, and there's a big like fishbowl conference room in the middle of this office, and then all the offices were around it. Our individual offices. There's like 20 of us there, and so I think about that setup, and I go, are we getting closer to a place where, because of the abilities of these models and call it AGI, call it whatever you want, its ability to do these things, that maybe now your 5 day work week, maybe it's not 5 days, but let's say you go in there, the first 2 or 3 hours is humans getting together in that fishbowl conference room in the beginning of the day, maybe 2, 3 hours, and using the best of human minds and our understanding of the complexities of all the clients that we have, and also having these AI agents that are, artificially in the room, essentially, that we're using to help us. And we solve problems together for our clients, for whatever the case is. And that this starts to become a bigger part and more important part of the day, that humans are sitting together and going, we're going to solve big problems today because we have the freedom and breadth to do it now. We don't have to do the menial tasks. And we have these AI agents that we can deploy immediately to help us move in this particular path, maybe to unstuck a particular client if it's consulting, or whatever the problem and solution is, that the pain points that you're trying to do. So I think that's where I see this going in the near term, is it's going to shift the way businesses work and operate, because it's not going to be necessary per se for everybody to have to do these like menial tasks. And so the work day is going to change. Does that happen in 2025? I think we're already seeing it now in certain ways, because we're all, a lot of us use ChatGPT, and that creates efficiencies for me at my desk sitting at home that I'm working abroad. And then that ripple effects into the business, into scaled and what we do with the Daily AI Show. So I think that's where I'm at on it. I'm gonna throw your name in here now, Beth, because I know you're gonna hear this in 10 to 15 seconds. But Beth, I would love for maybe you to give your opinions on that, because I think you can speak. And then, if everybody else is okay with it, I was gonna say for Beth, maybe give your thoughts on what we've been talking about, and then sort of wrap this up as well. And you can kind of take us out, because I know today we're gonna try to keep it to a little bit shorter of a show. But if you're cool with Beth, when you hear this, you can just cut me off, because I know it's going to be coming in here in a second. So let's see if we can get Beth. Maybe is she? I feel like yes. I'm getting a yes. She's going to come in.
Hey, so can you hear me? Yay! Okay. I've taken my earpiece out, otherwise I won't be able to speak. I think my take on what has happened, you guys have gotten to it to a certain extent, because I think that what I saw on Friday is AGI is almost not the point, right? Because what we saw on Friday was a model be able to evaluate itself and write and execute a Python program to get to to achieve a goal that it set for itself, or that it was given. And those two pieces are the are like on the road to a model being able to assess itself and improve itself, right? And whether that's AGI or not seems very much like splitting hairs, that it's actually way more important to just look at the capabilities. But of course, the capabilities weren't released. This was an announced model, not a dropped model. And we can all say that when it's dropped, it won't look a whole lot like what we were just shown, because I think we can all see the difference between what they're announcing and then what we actually get. That said, thanks everybody for joining us. If you're here for the first time, we're here all week, Monday through Friday, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. We're not doing the 12 Days of AI afternoon shows, but if something exciting happens, you can count on us to go live. And we'd love it if you come back. So that said, we've got great shows for you all week. We'll do news on Wednesday. And probably a tool review or something. Hope Santa brings you good tech things or whatever your tradition is. And okay, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.